Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I'm a firefighter in a county where everybody believes they know everybody. That's how suburbs work when the lawns are wide and the winters are long. We wave at each other from driveways, we shovel one another's sidewalks, we bring casseroles when a baby comes or a parent dies. My name is Chris, I'm 38, and I believed for a long time that a neighborhood could be a kind of net. If you fall, someone's there. Maybe that's why I didn't see it when I was the one about to drop. I met Anna at a 4th of July parade 8 summers ago. She was sitting on the curb with a lemonade and a sunburn on her nose, laughing at the clumsy high school marching band. If you asked me then what drew me, I would have said her laugh. It came up from her chest and caught other people like a friendly yawn. Before you knew it, you were laughing too. She had a way of making people feel like the space around them was warmer. We married in the park by the river where the willows dip their ends into the green water. We bought a beige 2-story on a cul-de-sac named for a tree that didn't grow anywhere nearby. We planted tomatoes and failed at them. We rescued a cat that decided immediately it preferred the neighbor's deck. We were fine. Better than fine. We were safe. Firehouse life turns you into a calendar. You think in shifts, in nights out and days home, in tones and hours slept before a call wakes you like you were never asleep at all. On my nights, I'd pack a bag with a paperback, 2 changes of socks, a sandwich wrapped in wax paper the way my mother taught me so the bread doesn't sweat. The guys are good guys, busted knuckles, dark humor, the kind of kindness that lets you tease a man all day and then show up to move his couch without being asked. We cook. We clean. We save what we can. We lose what we can't. You learn to let the siren noise drill holes in your brain without breaking it. You learn to come home with that noise still in you and not let it leak into your kitchen. That's a skill I thought I had mastered. Our neighbor to the right is a man named Todd. Insurance broker, yard always immaculate, flag hung at a perfect angle like he measured it with a protractor. Divorced once, no kids, one chocolate lab named Duke who believes every new person is a party and every fence is a suggestion. Duke is mostly a good dog. He's also big, strong, and deeply committed to whatever passes for adventure in his head. In the spring, he started finding his way into our yard. The first time, he destroyed the corner of the flower bed like he'd been hired to bury evidence. I texted Todd a picture with a laughing face. Your boy had a day and Todd came over with a bag of mulch and an apology and a 6-pack of light beer. He stayed 15 minutes, smiled with all his teeth, said he'd patch the sagging section of fence behind our willow. The next week, Duke came through again. I sent another text. Then I went to night shift. When you work nights, you divide your homecoming from your home. There's an in-between hour where you drive past the bakery that opens early, the joggers with their neon shoes, the school bus yawning its red lights. It's the best hour of the day because it belongs to nobody. That's the hour I came home on a Thursday, tired in the joints but not in the head, and saw the fence bowing inward like a fat man had leaned on it and changed his mind. Todd waved from his driveway with his morning coffee. "Gotta get a real post in there," he called, cheerful. Duke's found his prison break. I laughed. I went inside and found Anna making oatmeal with brown sugar. She had on my old college crewneck and her hair up with a pencil. "He's at it again," I said, kissing the soft place near her ear. "Duke the Destroyer." She smiled and said, "Todd's trying," like it was a nice thing to notice. She looked tired. Not scraped thin tired, but the kind of tired when you haven't slept deeply in too long and your dreams are just different rooms with the lights on. "You okay?" I asked, and she said, "I think the cat hates us," which is how we said we were okay without answering. The next week, Duke pulled a whole plank free and left it leaning like a bad tooth. I don't love being the neighbor who complains. I strapped the loose plank back on with 2 screws and a prayer and texted Todd that I'd do a more permanent fix on my next day off. He wrote back, "You're a saint. Beer's on me." Anna rolled her eyes at that, fondly. "He's trying too hard," she said. "Some men don't know how to do normal neighbor." I shrugged. As long as the fence stops acting like a revolving door. When the fence kept sagging, I did the thing men like me do when a thing we can fix refuses to be fixed. I bought a camera. Not a fancy one. One of those motion sensor deals you set on a post with an app on your phone that pings you when a raccoon sneezes within 50 feet. "Really?" Anna said, amused. when she saw me with a ladder and a drill. "We're going full suburban now?" I kissed her on the cheek and said, "I have a right to know who hates our lilacs," and she laughed and told me not to fall. I mounted it on the back corner, angled toward the part of the fence where Duke made his tours. I configured it so if anything bigger than a squirrel passed through, I'd get a video clip. The first day, I got 14 videos of the wind. The second night, I got a fox and the cat and 3 shadows that were probably birds. On my third night shift, around 1 in the morning, the tones dropped for a rollover on Route 9 and I forgot I owned a yard. We were out until just before dawn. At 6, the app pushed a notification, "Motion detected." I tapped it without thinking, the dumb curiosity of a tired man, and watched a clip of Duke's backside wiggling under the fence, his tail a metronome of joy. I snorted. Fine. At least I had proof for Todd to fix the weak spot. I pocketed the phone and went back to the kitchen where we were cleaning pans somebody had burned bacon in after midnight. The world is made of small fires. I came home to Anna frying eggs. The house smelled like pepper and toast. "The fox is back," she said, grinning. I saw the notification. I held up my phone and said, "Caught your criminal," and showed her the Duke video. She laughed. "That dog's going to marry our yard." I kissed her head and said, "I'm taking a shower," and she said, "Mind if I grab coffee with Claire later?" Which is what she says when she wants to tell me she'll be gone without asking. "Sure," I said. Claire is her friend from the yoga studio, a person who says intention like it's a daily vitamin. I like Claire. She says my name like she's checking I still know it. It rained that afternoon. I napped on the couch with the TV sound off and the closed captions playing like a book you didn't ask for. Around 4, the doorbell rang. I saw Todd through the glass, soaked, holding a bag of concrete mix. "I'll fix that post now if you've got time," he said. Hate to be the guy who only talks about fixing things. I watched him from the kitchen window while he dug out the rotten post and sunk a new one into the ground with more precision than I'd expected. He knew his way around a line level. It made me like him more. "You need a hand?" I asked, and he waved me off. "I got it," he said. "Cost of owning a jailbreaker." He smiled and I noticed he had a small chip in his front tooth I hadn't seen before. Funny the things you clock when you think you're paying attention. That night, Anna made a pasta dish she'd picked up from a blog where all the photos have white marble in the background. She poured me red wine, which we never drink on my nights home because it puts me to sleep. We ate at the counter. She told me Claire was thinking of going back to school. I told her about a kid we pulled out of a wreck who would be fine because of a seatbelt. Domestic, ordinary. I told her the new post would do the trick. Todd had done a good job. "He's a perfectionist," she said. "You two have that in common." She smiled kindly, not as a jab. I looked at her hands and thought about how they'd learned to pull pizza stones out of a hot oven without flinching. Small, strong hands. You build a life out of noticing those things. If the story stopped there, we'd be the just happy enough couple on a cul-de-sac where the worst thing that happens is a dog in the hydrangeas. Sometimes I imagine stopping it there and letting the rest of it stay rumor. But it didn't stop. It kept going in the Tuesday and Fridays way life keeps going, and I went to another night shift, and the camera kept doing what cameras do, watching without feeling. The clip that changed my life arrived on a Wednesday at 2:13 p.m. That's notable because I was up on the mezzanine at the firehouse retying hose and the alert made my pocket buzz against my thigh. I looked as I always do, because half the joy of owning a camera is seeing your own backyard behave. I expected Duke. What I saw at first was just movement, a human shape passing into the frame by the new post. I pinched to zoom. But the app doesn't let you zoom much, it's mostly designed to confirm raccoons. The figure was a man in a baseball cap, backwards, moving like he knew exactly where the soft spots in the fence were. Then another figure slips in from the left, Anna in her blue hoodie, the one with my department patch we got at a charity run, pulled up, her hair piled under it. When you're used to reading smoke, you know when a thing you're seeing is nothing and when it's something before your brain names it. My heart started to do that hollow punch. The two figures moved toward the willow, toward the gap where Duke squeezes, and for a second I think, stupidly, they're looking at the fix. Then the man turns, just a profile, and I see Todd's ridiculous jaw in outline. My mouth said his name like a question nobody asked. Anna steps close and he puts his hand at her waist in the absent, practiced way you only touch somebody if you've done it before without thinking. She looks up. She angles her face in a way I know. There is kissing, and it is not the funny, awkward peck of an affair that just began. It's a kiss that belongs to people who have been building little rooms in a house nobody else can enter. The clip is 12 seconds. The camera, to its credit, records in decent enough definition that there's no playing pretend. He puts his hand behind her neck. I see her fingers curl into the fabric of his shirt at his shoulder. Instinct tells you to rewind, to corroborate your pain with repetition. I watched it twice and then put the phone face down and sat on the steps like a man who just climbed a mountain and realized it isn't the one he meant to. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even stand up. I sat there while the guys yelled about whether a certain brand of canned chili counts as an abomination. I sat there while the dryer in the corner hummed. I sat there with my hands on my knees like a child in trouble. The next clip pinged, motion detected. The times played on the screen like an accusation, 2:18 p.m. Todd leaving the yard, easy as breathing. Anna following a minute later, pausing to look at the house in a way that made me hope, briefly, that she felt something like dread. She lifts her hand to her mouth and rubs it. Then she looks down. She disappears. I could have confronted her right then. I could have called Todd and come at him with my firefighter voice, the one that makes drunk men on porches sit down. I could have driven home on a red light. What I did was finish my shift. I cooked a chicken stir-fry. I checked ladders. I clogged a minute laughing at a video of a goat screaming like a man because that's what the body does when there's too much charge inside, you open a valve anywhere you can. I showered at the station and let the hot water pummel the thought of their hands, their heads, the angle of it. When I drove home in the gray light after dawn, I felt like I was piloting a submarine with a cracked window. Anna was at the table with coffee and one of those breakfast bars that promise to be healthy and taste like cardboard doing its best. She looked up like she always does, like I was something she expected and wanted at the same time. That ruined me more than the clip. She said, "Good morning," and I thought of the way she tugged his shirt. She asked, "Hungry?" And I thought of the way he'd put his hand at her waist. I said, "I might grab a shower first," and she said, "Go for it," and I stood in the upstairs bathroom with my palms on the sink looking at my face and thinking I recognized him, this man people thank when he puts a kid's hand in an oxygen mask. He looked like a stranger. I didn't bring it up. I know that sounds like cowardice. Maybe it is. It felt like triage. Like being on scene with too many patients and not enough hands, deciding to stop the bleeding before you splint the bone. The bleeding in me would have ripped all over the house if I opened my mouth. So I didn't. I went to the garage and puttered. I oiled the door track. I sorted nails by length. It's incredible what we do to avoid the truth. Around noon, Anna said she was running to the grocery. She kissed the air near my cheek. I stood very still until I heard her car back out. At 2 that afternoon, our homeowners association had a planning meeting at the community center. Budget, pool keys, you know, the real meat of American domestic life. I'd forgotten it entirely until I saw the email reminder when I opened my laptop to stare at nothing. I was listed on the agenda to talk about vandalism because, this is the kind of joke the universe tells when it's bored. I'd offered last month to address the uptick of petty stuff, mailboxes whacked by teenagers, garden gnomes stolen, a ruckus by the tennis courts. I'd planned to make a little pitch about cameras. Night before, I'd even made a slideshow with bullet points and a photo of the dented mailbox on Birch. I looked at the item on the agenda now and felt a piece of my brain place something heavy on top of something fragile. The community center smells like furnace closet and lemon cleaner. Couples came in carrying reusable water bottles like talismans. People nodded, smiled, repeated each other's names as if we might have forgotten since last Saturday's cookout. Anna came separately, later, with her parents. Her mom had that tight smile she wears when she's determined to be gracious beyond reasonable limits. Her father, Bill, is a quiet man who measures twice and cuts once in his words. He hugged me with his chin tucked, like a man hugging a son. The way his hands felt on my back almost made me haul him outside to tell him right there, to ask him to take me somewhere safe where men put chairs back where they found them and carve wood into honest shapes. Instead I said, "Good to see you," and wanted to get on a treadmill until my legs forgot the room. The president of the HOA, a woman named Nancy who can find a spreadsheet at 50 paces, called the meeting to order with her gavel she bought on Etsy. We went through landscaping, snow removal, a candidate for the open secretary position. Bill asked 2 sensible questions about the budget. Anna sat with her hands in her lap, demure, public. Todd arrived 10 minutes late in a collared shirt. He sat across the aisle. He waved at me like a kid at a school assembly and then looked away quickly, the way a dog does when it knows it's chewed up the couch. When my agenda item came up, security cameras deterrence, I stood and plugged my laptop into the cord that lives under the table. A small part of me detached and observed all of it with clinical neatness, the splash screen, the cursor, the way the projector always adds a green cast to human faces. I cleared my throat. "I'm not here to sell anything," I said, "because that's how you disarm neighbors who don't want to be told what to do. I just want us to think about where we're vulnerable and how we can protect what we love." If this were a neat story, I would have then performed a moral calculus and chosen restraint. That would be very mature. That would result in less wreckage. But I had watched a small film in my yard that afternoon and something in me had decided that if I was going to bleed, I'd rather do it in a room where people could see the color of it. You may hate me for what I did next. I don't know if I would like me, either, if I hadn't been me. I clicked to the next slide. "Sometimes cameras catch what we don't expect," I said. "Sometimes they tell us truths we wouldn't have asked for." I cued a clip. Not the kiss, the clip from earlier in the week where Duke slithered under the fence, tail like a flag. The room laughed. "We all know Duke," Nancy said, relieved. I advanced. "Sometimes they show us where the fence is weak." A still image of the bowed plank, my screw fix, the part before the new post. Another chuckle. 2 people nodded at Todd, the good neighbor who fixes things. I said, "And sometimes they show us what breaks us." Then I pressed play on the 12-second video I had trimmed to begin the moment the 2 figures entered the frame. My hands did not shake. I watched the faces in the room go slack one by one as the grainy yet undeniable choreography played out, Todd's hand, Anna's angle, the unmistakable story of it. The room felt like an elevator that had stopped too fast between floors. Someone gasped, one of the Jacobs twins, I think. Nancy made a sound like she had lost her gavel. Anna's mother put her hand to her mouth and stood, then sat again hard, as if the floor had moved without her permission. Bill's neck went red, then white. Anna didn't stand. She stared at the screen with such intensity that I wondered if she thought she could force the pixels to rearrange themselves by will. Todd made the error of trying to speak. "Chris," he said, standing, hands out in that placating way men think will fix things when words won't. "Let's sit down," Nancy said in the voice of a kindergarten teacher at the end of the year. I didn't look at Hannah. I didn't look at Todd. I looked at the neighbors, Margie with her 2 golden retrievers, the young couple who just painted their door teal, the man who fights dandelions with the righteous fury of a monk, and said, calmly, "This is why cameras matter. Because sometimes the truth is the only thing that keeps us from pretending we live in a story that isn't ours." Then I stopped the clip. I closed the laptop. The silence changed its flavor, less shock, more oxygen-starving. Anna's chair scraped. She stood, not fast, and looked at the back of the room and then at the door and then at her parents as if there were a sequence she could follow to make the world go back. She didn't cry. She looked like a person being observed for a study. Her father stood. He didn't put his arm around her. He didn't say her name. He turned to me instead. His voice, when it came, was quiet as a socket wrench. "You," he said, swallowing around the word, "have been like a son to us." He paused. That was the moment I thought I might vomit. He looked at Anna, then past her, as if he didn't trust his face to aim at something as beloved as his daughter when saying what he was about to. And he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The unfinished part tilted the room. I felt a rush of tenderness for him that almost knocked me over, this man who measured lumber and daughters and found his numbers no longer lined up. They left. Not with a flurry, not with slammed doors. Quietly. Two kind people standing up and exiting a story before it drew blood from them in public. Todd tried again. "Anna, please," but no one heard him because the noise in the room went soft and thick like snow. 5 seconds later, he left too, head down, Duke's owner at last without the benefit of canine charm to warm the scene. Anna was the last to move. She stood for a heartbeat in the doorframe, as if the house knew her and wouldn't let her pass. Then she went. When the door shut, somebody coughed. Nancy, bless her procedural heart, looked at the agenda and said in a small voice, "Pool key replacements," and half the room laughed because if they didn't, the only other option was to break into pieces. I packed my laptop and walked out into the hallway where the bulletin board advertised a senior euchre night and a lost cat. The world, it turns out, keeps offering euchre and lost cats whether your life is on fire or not. That can be a kindness. It can also be a cruelty. Bill came by our house that evening. He knocked like a man who has always knocked. I opened the door and he stood on the porch in his hardware store jacket holding nothing in his hands because when you go to a man's door to talk about his marriage, you shouldn't carry anything that might be mistaken for comfort. He looked at me with eyes that had done a lot of math and found no remainder that made sense. "You've been like a son to us," he said, repeating, as if saying it again could make it a tool that fit. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it in a dozen directions. He nodded. He put his hand on my shoulder and squeezed. "We will take care of our daughter," he said. "You take care of yourself." Then he looked past me into the house as if he were looking for the ghost of the laughter that used to live here and walked back to his truck. You might want to know what Anna said. That night, she didn't say anything. She slept at her parents' house. The next afternoon, she texted me a long message in fragments because that's how the brain works when it's trying to make a story out of shame. She said she was sorry. She said it had started small and stupid and then had that terrible way of making your heart think it needed what it didn't. She said it happened because I was gone, and then immediately said that wasn't an excuse and that she hated the part of her that reached for the closest heat instead of asking for a fire to be built at home. She said Todd meant nothing. She said he meant something. Both can be true, depending on which day you ask. I didn't text back a paragraph. I texted one sentence, "We need to talk about lawyers." It felt like throwing a rope across a ravine. Necessary. Ugly. Human. She wrote back, "Okay." Then nothing. I thought, later, about the meeting and what I'd done. People will tell you there's dignity in keeping things private. They're right. There's also a particular bloodletting in living two different stories in your house and on your street. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to attend barbecues where people looked at me with their heads tilted slightly, wondering if I knew what they knew. I didn't want to sit in my living room with the lights off, imagining the neighborhood as a mouth whispering round us. I wanted to fix the truth to a wall and let it glare. That's not heroic. It's a preference. It was mine. In the days after, people did what people do when they're faced with a story they can't turn into a tidy moral. They baked things. They texted hearts. They offered anything you need in a tone that implied they hoped I'd say, nothing, and let them off the hook. At the firehouse, the guys didn't make jokes, and that told me I was worse off than if they had. Jokes are love in our language. Silence is a hospital room. Todd put his house up for sale a month later. Duke went to live with his ex-wife because the new condo he bought didn't allow dogs. That almost broke me more than the other parts, watching that dog jump into the back of a car with his tongue out, thrilled for an adventure he didn't know why he needed. I hate thinking about the innocent. That's always been my problem on scenes, too. You can handle the man who made the wrong turn. It's the kid in the back seat clutching a stuffed animal that will rot you. Anna and I handled the paperwork like people in a guidebook, separate counsel, the house sold, assets divided with more fairness than either of us felt like we deserved, which is probably the definition of fairness. We didn't fight over the cat. The cat had long ago declared himself a sovereign nation. We didn't fight over the mugs. It turns out people don't want to drink out of a cup that remembers your marriage. We did fight, briefly, about whether the camera had been a trap. I told her it had been for a dog. She said, "Everything is a trap when you're already walking with your eyes closed." That line has a little poetry in it I wish I didn't admire. Her parents never turned on me, not even in the reflex way people sometimes do when blood is in question. When I went over to pick up a box of books one afternoon, her mother hugged me and cried into my jacket in a way that made me feel like I was stealing. "We raised her to be better," she said, blaming herself, as parents do. "She is better," I said, because it was true even if it was not true enough. Bill didn't say anything that day. He pressed his lips together and shook my hand like a man closing a deal with a firm price and no add-ons. People asked me if I missed her. That's a dumb question because it expects one answer that stays the same. I missed her like a tooth you poke with your tongue even though your dentist told you not to. I missed her when I burned my toast because she would have scraped it and called it charred artisan. I missed her when a call ran long and I wanted to text someone the shorthand version, the all good that means I saw something terrible but I'm still the man you expect. And I didn't miss her when I woke at 3 a.m. and didn't have to wonder who she was texting. Both are true. Hold both in your hands and try to sleep. The HOA replaced Nancy after a year because even Etsy gavels can't save a woman from the exhaustion of caring about everyone's bushes. The meeting after the incident is remembered by the kind of people who remember everything, that night but mostly the neighborhood did what neighborhoods do, rolled forward. New family. New dog. New argument about whether the kids can chalk the sidewalks. Sometimes I think the greatest mercy and the greatest insult of the American suburb is that it will forget you if you ask it to, and even if you don't. I still work nights. I'm still good at putting out fires other people start. I tell probies not to be heroes, which is a thing you say so the job doesn't eat the parts of you that want to be special. I run 2 miles on the treadmill in the bay when the snow makes the roads bad. I make decent chili now. In the kitchen at the firehouse, the guys have started making jokes again. They pretend not to hear how grateful I am for that. As for cameras, I left the one up. I adjusted the angle away from the old weak spot because it's fixed now and I don't need to clench my jaw every time a notification dings. Nowadays I get foxes and the cat and sometimes a kid cutting across with a basketball. A while back, the app pinged at sunset and I opened it out of habit. In the frame, a pair of cardinals hopped along the fence pickets, red and impossible, like you couldn't have painted them better. They sat for a second, then flew. I stood in my kitchen and cried, quiet, the way men do when nobody's asking. Not because of the birds. Because of the way the light looked on the fence. Because things break and then you fix them and then they break somewhere else. Because I am tired and also lucky and also alive. Anna sent me a Christmas card that first year. Not a photo, thank God, just a watercolor of a house that could have been ours from a distance if you blurred your eyes. Inside she wrote, "I hope you're warm." I hung it on the fridge for the season because it seemed mean not to, and then I took it down in January and put it in the drawer where we keep spare batteries and mismatched screws. I don't open that drawer often. When I do, I see the corner of the card and think of porch lights and hands on shoulders and men who knock and say you are like a son. I think of Duke, tail high, believing the world loves him. I think of Todd's chipped tooth and how little details can betray you. I think of the life I have now, which is smaller and more mine. If there's a moral, I don't own it. I'm a firefighter, not a philosopher. But if I had to offer you something, standing here with the smell of diesel and pine cleaner in my clothes, it would be this: put a camera up if it helps you sleep. Or don't, if you know you're not ready to see what you'd rather not. Fix your fence. Wave at your neighbor. Love the person in your kitchen so loudly they can't mistake your quiet for absence. And when the truth comes, and it will, because it always does in one form or another, let it. Let it wash you out and set you down. You will not drown. Or maybe you will, for a while. But you will get your footing back. Humans are perverse that way. We build on floodplains and then plant gardens. The last thing I'll say is this: the night after the meeting, I drove to the station and sat in the bay with the truck sleeping like horses. I turned on the cab light and wrote a note on a scrap of paper I tore from a run sheet: "I am still me." I stuck it in the visor of my truck like a teenager's prayer. I don't know why I'm telling you that. Maybe because we all need a place to put a sentence that doesn't fit anywhere else. Maybe because the net I believed in, the neighborhood, the marriage, the idea that being a good man could immunize you against ugly things, turned out to be a story I told myself so I could sleep. I still like that story. I just don't confuse it with a guarantee. I am still me. I get up. I go to work. I check the ladder. I pour coffee. I wave at the couple on the corner with the teal door. Duke is gone, but every once in a while, a different dog sticks his head through a fence plank and grins at me like we're not in charge at all. And I grin back, because he's right. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.